when you walk through a storm. Hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of the lark. Walk on through the
Hello, welcome to You'll Never Walk Alone World. We are back after we had a little break, but we are back now on our live shows. We're very happy, very excited, and extremely happy for today's show. It's a very special show. We have been wanting to have the guest we have today for a long time, but well, then he had to be in for surgery, and then we had to stop for a while, but finally we have him here. It's an amazing show. It's going to be great because we're going to be talking about a Liverpool legend. He was a player, and now there's a book about his story. We've had before our friend Jeff Goulding, who is author of 5 LFC books like Red Odyssey, the trilogy, and Stanley Park. But now he has released his new book called The Lost Shankly Boy. This is the story about George Scott. He was a youth player back in a great era, back in the Shankly era. And today we have George here to talk about his story, his career, and the book, The Lost Shankly Boy. So let's bring George Scott live here with us. Welcome, George.
Hello, Raoul. Hello, nice to see you. Nice to be with you. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Yes.
Great to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you here, George. You know, we've been wanting to have you since September, but lots of things happened besides the pandemic. And finally, here we are.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to go into hospital, which was a bit unexpected, but I had a five-way bypass of my heart, but I'm feeling great now on the road to recovery and looking forward to being 100% in the not too distant future.
Yes, I mean, it's great to see you and hear you and listen to you. You look great, strong as ever.
Yeah, I feel great.
So we're very happy to have you here. So, George, let's get to it. First of all, I mean, you wore this red shirt. That's amazing. You were there in the field. You were part of a big era. But first of all, tell us, how did it all started? How and when did you started playing football?
Well, before I tell you that, I would like to pay tribute to Jeff Goulding. I think it's important because he and I have written this book together, and he's a wonderful, wonderful writer. And basically, I would like to tell you, before I tell you about how it started, I'll tell you how Jeff and I first met. We met at the Shankly Hotel, and it was just to have a chat, really, about maybe 1 or 2 articles on the internet. And during the conversation, Jeff said to me, "There's a book here. I would love to write it with you." And we basically shook hands on it that night, 26th of November last year. And in the next 9 months, we wrote the book, and we only met 4 times face to face. We basically sort of communicated by email. I sent him all the information, sent him all the story, all the words. He messed it about, changed it around, and we did it between us. And it was his idea, The Lost Shankly Boy, which I think is quite an inspiring title. And the artwork from the publisher also was excellent. So it's been a great thrill working with Jeff, and I'm really pleased with the result of the book. As far as how it started, Raoul, I was only 15, and I was up in Aberdeen. Always wanted to play for Aberdeen. That was my club. That was my team as a child. It's like a lad living in Liverpool wants to play for Liverpool. I wanted to play for Aberdeen, and I'd actually agreed to sign for Aberdeen as an apprentice. I was only 15, and then the caretaker at our school happened to be a scout for Liverpool, and he persuaded me to go down to Liverpool for a trial for a week. And I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. I never heard of Liverpool Football Club, really. I knew about Bill Shankly because he took Dennis Law to Huddersfield Town and made him a star. And Dennis was from Aberdeen, so he was my idol. I looked up to Dennis Law. I wanted to be like him, you know. So I came to Liverpool for a trial with Gordon Wallace, who went on later to play a number of games in the first team. And Gordon and I met as 15-year-old boys in the station at Lime Street. And we went up to Anfield and we had a trial for a week. We both did well. We scored goals in 3 games. One was against Everton, I remember, youth team. And at the end of the week, Shankly wanted me to sign for the club. And I wasn't sure about it because it's a big step at 15 years of age to travel from Aberdeen in the north of Scotland and come all the way down to Liverpool when I'd already agreed to sign for Aberdeen. So, but they worked very hard on me to try and persuade me. And I remember saying to Bill and Ruben Bennett when we were in his office, you know, my granny doesn't even know where Liverpool is, Mr. Shankly. And he said, you tell her. We're in the 2nd division at the moment, but we'll be in the 1st division next year. Soon everybody will know where Liverpool is. And I remember him saying that to me, and it lit a fire in me. And when I got back to Aberdeen, I told my parents, there's only one team that I'm going to play for. And that was it, really. So that's what set me on the road to Liverpool at the age of 15.
Wow. What a story. And I mean, to us Liverpool fans, talking about Shankly and talking about that era when they were in 2nd division and then Shankly brought them to the 1st division, it's just like talking about legends. I mean, just like if it was stories, I don't know, like King Arthur that we know they happen, but it's like books to us. So listening to you talking about those stories from your life, it's unbelievable. But it's also unbelievable also for football fans, listening to a legend like you talking about how things were before. Football was totally different back then. I mean, you were telling us that you didn't really know what Liverpool Football Club was. You didn't know if it was right for a 15-year-old to sign for a club. Nowadays, it all changed. What do you think are the biggest differences from football back then when you were 15 and football now in 2020?
Well, it's huge differences. In my day, when I played, we played for the love of the game. There was no money in the game in the beginning. The maximum wage was £20 a week. My first wage as an apprentice at Anfield was £7.50 a week. And that was enough money to have a great time in Liverpool, believe it or not, in a week. Watch the Beatles in the Cavern and go into town and enjoy ourselves on £7.50 a week. And I used to send £2 home to my mother in Aberdeen to help the family out because I felt guilty leaving them. My father had to look after a family of 5 people, 4 people, my 2 brothers and his wife, my mum, on £9 a week. That was his wage. So I felt guilty because I thought if I'd signed for Aberdeen, I'd be giving them some money. So I sent £2 home to them every week. And then that I had to pay £3.50 to my landlady for my lodgings and all the bed and breakfast and all the rest. And I left me £2 a week. And £2 a week was enough for a good week in Liverpool. We were all right. We did all right on that. So it's completely different. The pitches were different. The game's much quicker now. Modern technology in the game is incredible. We play with light boots, light ball, pitches like Wembley Stadium was in my day. Wembley was the only stadium that looked like that. I mean, it was like a bowling green, like the Masters Golf. But
wow,
the other pitches, the other playing surfaces started very well. Within a month, the center of the pitch was okay. Sort of the wings and the outside was okay, but the middle of the pitch was churned up with mud, and the goal mouths were muddy. And so and it was only the floodlights were there, but it was like a floodlight in every corner, not all these lights along the stand like there is now. There was one camera, if there was a camera. It's probably in black and white as well. So there was a lot went on in the pitch that the referee perhaps didn't see, So it was a different game, completely different game, That's a lovely picture you're showing there. There, that's me with my hands on my knees.
That great pictures. We're going to be looking at these pictures through the show, but first, So you were in Scotland, a really young boy in Scotland. Shankly brings you to Liverpool. So tell us how was when you arrived to the city of Liverpool and meeting Shankly for the first time.
Well, it was amazing because he was so inspirational, even at that young age. In fact, he was like a father figure to me, really. And I think he felt very loyal. I think he felt for me because, unfortunately, when I came down to Liverpool, my grandparents both passed away quite quickly after I left Aberdeen. And my grandparents had brought me up because my father was killed in Normandy in the war before I was born. He was only 21 and he lost his life just after D-Day. So when I came to Liverpool, my granddad saw me off at the station. And that was the last time I saw him because he died 4 or 5 weeks later. So I think Bill was, he wanted to look after me. And Ruben Bennett was from Aberdeen. So they took me under the wing. But, there was no favours done. You had to perform. It was we were going from playing in the schools football, where you were the best player in the team, best player in the city, to then go into the big pond, where everybody was the best player in their city. So it was into the ruthless game of professional football. So you had to make your way, you had to work, you had to strive. And one thing Shankly admired in me, I think, was enthusiasm. Because what Bill used to say to us was, natural enthusiasm is the greatest thing in the world. Without it, you are nothing. And he used to say to us, you have to make things happen. Nothing happens unless you make it happen. So he gave you all these little phrases, all these little sayings, which stuck with me all my life, really. And his passion was just contagious. And he turned Liverpool from what was a second division team, going nowhere really, into what became and probably still is, well, it is, the greatest football team in the world. And it all started with Bill, in my view, and Klopp's taking it on now. And he's very much like Bill.
Yes, it started there. I mean, the history of Liverpool Football Club, it's over 100 years old, but the Reds, we know today, that powerful team, the passion of the fans all over the world, the titles, it all started with Bill Shankly, and you were part of that era. You arrived back then, so tell us a little bit of that Liverpool Football Club, because I mean, you trained and you played and you were there with lots of players that are now legends. But tell us, how was that Liverpool from the 60s?
Well, it was great because, the thing was, unfortunately, in those days, there were no substitutes. So once you got to the brink of the first team, it's a bit like Ryan Brewster now. He had to leave Liverpool and go to Sheffield United. And a number of other players have had to leave and go to other clubs. Well, I was in that sort of position, really, because the team was so good. Shankly had pulled this team together with Tommy Lawrence and Ron Yates and Ian St. John and the two wingers, Callaghan and Thompson. Thompson, one of the greatest players I ever saw, and Hunt. So that team was so good that to get into it, it was very difficult without being substitutes. So it was very frustrating because for 3 years, I was the leading goal scorer in the second team. And by quite a way too, but I just couldn't break into it, unfortunately. And when I got to the age of 20, I think Bill knew it was time to move on because you can't stay in the reserves forever. You have to play first team football. But going back to your question, Raoul, it was wonderful. We used to go down to Melwood on the coach every morning. First team reserves, apprentices all together. We'd get down to Melwood, we'd have the training for a couple of hours and we'd come back on the coach and we'd have our lunch in the canteen at Anfield. Completely different then than it is now. And in fact, in the book, there's a section there where I describe how Liverpool Stadium was inside the stadium at the time. When you had people like Bob Paisley, who was the trainer at the time. Joe Fagan was the reserve team trainer. He's my boss, really. He was the guy that ran the reserve team. And you had people like Albert Shelley, and even people that used to come to the club that played for the team in 1921. There's a lad called Ephraim Longworth. He captained England. He's a legend. He played 300 or 400 games for Liverpool, and he was in his early 70s. And he used to come to the club and talk to us young lads, and we used to be inspired by him, what he'd achieved, And he used to have a game of snooker with us or pool, and he put money on it. And sadly he had a bit of Parkinson's disease, and his hand used to shake. But when he was hitting the ball, it didn't shake. So he used to win the money. So he was a real character. So there was the great players, the legends. There was also a lot of players, and again in the book, that there were great players but didn't quite make it. A bit like myself, there were people there that nobody would have heard of, but they were really talented boys. And they ended up going to other clubs. Like Alec Totten went up to Scotland, became one of the greatest managers in Scottish football. He managed 8 different clubs, including Rangers. And other players who went to America or went up and played in the Scottish League, and they were the same position as me. They were in any other club they'd have been in the first team. But Shankly built this wonderful team, which went on for a number of years without changes, right to the cup final in '65 and beyond. And he only changed them in 1970 when they all started to perhaps get a little bit, in that period in their lives, were moving into 30 years of age, and he had to change it and bring in people like Keegan and Tushak and his second great team. But it was great being there in the early 60s because Melwood was just being built, really. They brought the shooting boards in the corner where it was like in the army, you know, you had to train so hard, and Ruben Bennett was like a sergeant major, you know, and but it was fun as well. But there was a serious business to it. Shankly always used to tell us, you're playing for the supporters. These are the lads that work in the docks, work in the factories. They've got humdrum lives, many of them. They come to Anfield on a Saturday and it lights their lives up. So you guys are playing for them. Never forget it. And that's the sort of thing he used to say to us. So it couldn't fail but inspire you, really. I mean, because he was such a moral person. He lived by the standards he set. He always lived in the same semi-detached house all his life in West Derby. I used to play with the kids in the field across the road and never turned anybody away from his door. So he was a wonderful man as well as a wonderful manager.
Yeah, inspiring. I mean, for the players, for the fans, and it's been so many years after Shankly, and Liverpool still has that essence of Bill Shankly. And I mean, now it's not just people from the city of Liverpool, and not just in England. Just that people all over the world, like myself here in Mexico, we are inspired by Bill Shankly. So it's an amazing era. And well, I bet lots of players, young players back then and nowadays, sometimes you say 20 and I'm not on the first team. Many young players probably quit football, but you didn't. You tell us what happens with your career after Liverpool.
Well, I mean, after I'd done my 5 years at Liverpool and knocked on the door as hard as I could, after the FA Cup final in 1965, Bill decided to sell me to Aberdeen for £12,000, which was a good fee for a player that hadn't actually made the first team. Very good fee, in fact. And so I got a nice signing on fee from that. So I went back to live with my parents in Aberdeen, with my brothers, and went back to my first love, really. And it was an interesting story because after the cup final, and this is all in the book, but after the cup final, I came back to Liverpool, and it was a wonderful, wonderful day. I mean, there was 500,000 people in the streets. I remember standing behind Bill on the town hall, and as far as the eye could see, there were people. And it was glorious for a young man to experience that. But within a couple of days, I was away. I was leaving Liverpool after the Inter Milan game. Bill got me in the office and he said to me, he said, I want you to think of yourself as the 12th best player in the world, son. I said, what do you mean? Wow. He said, well, the first team's just won the league and the cup, and they're the greatest team in the world, he said, and you're the leading scorer in the reserve team. So you think of yourself as the 12th best player in the world. You go out back to Aberdeen and prove me right, son. And then as I was leaving the office, tears running down my face, he said to me, he said, think of yourself like the foundation stone of the Liverpool Cathedral. Nobody will ever see it, but without the stones, George, the cathedral doesn't get built. Now, I don't know why a man of a simple background from a place in Glenbuck, a miner's son, who come up with those inspirational words, which it moved me on, but I left his office inspired. And when I went back to Aberdeen, and I got used to the fact that I wasn't at Liverpool anymore, I went into Aberdeen's first team. And so and at Aberdeen, I had a wonderful start. I scored in the first team in 13 minutes in my debut. And then we played Rangers, Glasgow Rangers. And they had 9 internationals in the team. The Scottish captain was playing for them. And I was playing for Aberdeen on my hometown team at Catodry. 30,000 there. All my parents, my school friends, everybody was there. My girlfriend, Carol, who's now my wife. And we beat them 2-0, and I laid both the goals on. And it was a glorious, one of the best days of my life, really. And went to the pub at night, and all the fans were mobbing us. And then we played Hearts, and we drew with them, and I played another couple of games. And then I played 8 games, I think, and then I got a terrible injury. Training on the beach, I got tackled from behind, and the same injury as Van Dijk's got now, a cruciate ligament injury. And it put me out for the rest of the season. And the manager then, he let me go at the end of the year. Didn't think I was going to be fit enough to play again. And so I moved from Aberdeen back to Liverpool to stay with my wife's parents. And then the story moved on from there.
Wow. What a story. I mean, that moment you were telling us that last game and the words Bill Shankly told you, I got shivers. That's really inspiring, and tells you a lot about Bill Shankly, but also the way you're telling the story tells a lot about yourself, George. Because I mean, it seems you're a man that you see the good things in every moment of life. You see opportunity, and I mean, someone else might tell you that story with a little sadness that you're leaving Liverpool, but you were telling the story, and I could see the inspiration and listen to it in your voice for what was coming. And then, of course, you played in your hometown. That's amazing. But also, you played internationally. I mean, you were overseas, and you played, well, not necessarily, yes, overseas because you were in the island, but you played in South Africa, right?
Yeah, I think the book actually, Raoul, in many ways, I look upon it as a fight for survival. I mean, it's a never say die story. I like it to think that somebody somewhere who is having a tough time, who's maybe having their dreams taken away, even kids now at Anfield, they go in at 7 and 8 years of age, 9, 10, they get to 12, and the door's closed to them because you have to be good. There's not many make through. You got Trent Alexander, you got Gerrard, you got Carragher, and a few lads coming through now like Nico Williams and others. But you think of the hundreds of boys that come into the academy at Kirby, and one day they get told, "I'm sorry, son, you're not going to make it." In my day, you got to 17 when that happened. You joined at 15, you got 2 years to prove yourself, and then Bill Shankly took you in the office and he said yes or no. You're either going to be a professional footballer playing for Liverpool, or you're going to be on the dole, out of work, looking for another club. And most of us left school at 15 with no education, no qualifications, no university. So it was a tough call, really, in those days. And so the book, I think, is about fighting back, you know, and same with South Africa. I mean, when I came back from Aberdeen, I only had 2 offers. One was from a non-league team, and one was from an Irish league team. And I worked in a factory in Liverpool, throwing ropes around pallets of biscuits for about a month. And the supporters used to love the Shankly stories, you know. I mean, so they looked after me quite well there. But I didn't know what the future held for my wife and myself and young boy. Well, the boy wasn't born then, but he was coming later. He was born in South Africa, my oldest son. So, but I didn't know what the future held. So there I got this wonderful opportunity when a man called Dave Watson phoned me up and he said Bill Shankly had been on to him and recommended me because he came to England to pick up some players for the South African League for Port Elizabeth City. And one of the players was a guy called Terry Mancini as well, who became a big player in England. And Kevin Lewis, who played for Liverpool. In fact, he scored 2 goals that got Liverpool promoted from the 2nd division to the 1st division in 1962. So Kevin was going to Port Elizabeth as well. So it was a great opportunity, but unfortunately, of course, the apartheid political situation then was in operation. Well, I was only a boy. I didn't know much about politics. And I just wanted to play football. That was all I was interested in. And there was no other opportunity. So the guy, Dave Watson, he showed us the photographs of the lovely weather. The pitches were great. The stadium's fantastic. The beaches. And it was something you just couldn't turn down. So we went to South Africa. We got married on the 30th of July. Same day England won the World Cup. So, and then we went to South Africa on the 8th of August, about a couple of weeks later. And it was fantastic over there. The big team, Port Elizabeth, first professional full-time team in the country. We used to get 20,000 every game. The African supporters were fantastic. We were all British players, and they loved us. And they used to have the Union Jacks behind the goal and all sorts. I mean, so in 1966, when I first went, there were only 12 games left at the end of the season. I scored 9 goals. Scored on my debut, diving header, which made my name a little bit. And then the second season in 1967, we won the league. We won the Premier League of South Africa. And I think I was the 3rd top scorer in the country. And we had a great season that year. It was wonderful. We were sponsored by the Ford Motor Company. And the night we won the league in Port Elizabeth, the whole of the Eastern Cape was celebrating. In fact, it was 50 years ago, a few years ago, when they had a big celebration in Port Elizabeth, you know, with all the trophy and memorabilia and everything, and they wanted me to go over there, but it's too far. I couldn't do it, you know. So I just had to talk to them on the phone, you know. So it was great 2 years in South Africa, and then sadly, at the end of the 2-year contract, I had an unfortunate incident when someone broke into our apartment and took a knife out on me, and I nearly got, well, I did get stabbed, but it didn't, it cut the jersey and split the chin, but it was very close to losing my life. And that frightened us a little bit, and we'd come to the end of the 2-year contract. The club didn't want me to leave because they held your contract. But fortunately for me, I got a letter from the club when I first joined saying I could leave after 2 years, which the chairman didn't know about, but the manager had signed. So that enabled me to get my freedom to play in England again. And luckily for me, the chairman of Liverpool came to South Africa on holiday, and his friend wrote to me and told me that Mr. Reeks, his name was Sidney Reeks, was in South Africa and wanted to, as he said, renew his acquaintanceship with me. So I met Sidney Reeks at the airport in Port Elizabeth, and we had a long chat, and all the kids were coming round, and the chairman of Liverpool was there giving badges to the little lads and everything. And he said to me, he said, "You're staying or are you coming home? You've done well here. Are you staying? Are you staying here?" I said, No, Mr. Reeks. I've had this incident and it's been brilliant here, but I want to come back to England. And he said to me, "When you come back, come and see Billy. He'll fix you up with the club. He loves you. He will sort you out. I'm sure he will." He asked me to look you up. So that's what I did. We came back to England, and you couldn't do this today. I went up to Anfield, met Roger Hunt in the car park, and had a chat with him. And then Roger said he's in his office, go and see him. So I walked down the passage, turned right, looked along the passage, and there was Bill coming out of his office. He had 2 reporters with him. And as soon as he saw me, they were dismissed. And he made some crack like, "You haven't grown, son." I thought the sun made you grow. Took me in his office, and we sat there, and he said, "You've done well, haven't you?" I said, "I have done this. I have done, boss, you know." Always called him boss. He said, "Well, where do you want to play?" I knew that Liverpool was out of the question. So I said, "Anywhere, boss, anywhere." So he suggested Tranmere Rovers, which is in Birkenhead. It's just a few miles from Liverpool. So I went, he got on the telephone to the manager, and in his inimitable way, he persuaded the manager to give me a month's trial on first team wages. So I went over to Clenton Park, Tranmere's ground. The manager saw me and said, "I hope you can play, son. I've just committed first team wages on Bill Shankly's word." He didn't know who I was. So he put me in the first team. The very first game against Derby County, it was a testimonial game for a long-serving player, 14,000 there. And he put me in the first team. And Derby County won the league the following year. They had people like Roy McFarlane, Shilton, Dave Mackay, wonderful players, legends, Archie Gemmell, and Clough was the manager. And so that was my debut for Tranmere. And in the first half, I had an absolutely spectacular game. I could do no wrong. They must have thought they signed Pelé. But at half time, they gave me a 2-year contract. So that 45 minutes were probably the most important 45 minutes of my life, because I knew I had one chance. And sometimes in life, you only get one chance. You have to take it. And I got the 2-year contract, which enabled Carol and I to come back to the UK with my 4-month-old child. Bought a house on the Wirral, which is just across the road from Liverpool. Got me 2 years at Tranmere, which was very successful. I played about 50 games in the first team, and loved every minute of it. Had some great cup runs, and used to get 10,000 on Friday nights. And Tranmere supporters were great. And so I had a wonderful couple of years there, and then the story moved on from there.
Wow. Well, and then from there, when did you retire, George, from football?
Well, after I left Tranmere, I left Tranmere because, again, it's in the book, this, so I don't want to give away too much in the book, and I'll be talking here all night. But I got a job as a sales representative for a huge company called Nestle, the worldwide company, Swiss company. And that was against all the odds because I never had any training for anything. I didn't have any education. And I was playing for Tranmere, but I was 28 years of age. And I'm thinking, this is in the 3rd division. I'm not going to make the big time now. So I've got to think of the next 40 years of my life. What am I going to do? I didn't want to open a pub or drive a lorry or do something like that or work in a factory. So I saw the advert for this job as a sales representative at the Adelphi Hotel in Liverpool, which a huge hotel in Liverpool city centre. So I went for the interview whilst I was still playing for Tranmere. And because one of the Tranmere players had left Tranmere to go to a non-league team in the Northern Premier League called Ellesmere Port Town. And he offered me £20 a week to come to play for Ellesmere Port Town, and £10 a week in the summer when I wasn't even playing. So I thought if I can get the job with Nestle with a company car and a salary and a future and carry on playing semi-professional football at a very high level, then that's a no-brainer. So I went for the interview. When I walked in the Adelphi and I saw these 80 people there, all with their collar and ties and educated people, and I thought, no, I can't do this. I'll never make it. So I turned and walked out. I'm walking down past along Lime Street towards the Lime Street station, ready to get back home. And suddenly something made me stop. And what would Shankly? What would he think? You know, you never give up. You've got to go back and give it a go. So I went back, and I ended up getting the job. There was only 2 jobs. There was 80 people there. So, and one of the things that got me the job, I think, at the end was the reference that I got from Bill. Because before I went to South Africa, I went to see him. And when I went to see him, he typed a reference up for me. And the typewriter is still, it's at the Shankly Hotel now. And he did it on one finger typing. Dear people. Now, most references say, dear sir or madam. This one says, dear people. And it's only a small p. I hasn't even got a capital P. Dear people, George Scott played for my football club for 5 years. During that time, he caused no trouble to nobody. I would stake my life on his character. W. Shankly in red ink. Now, if you've got a reference like that, you can't let him down, can you? You've got to be true to it. So when the guy saw this, he said to me, is that a forgery? I said, no, it's not a forgery. It's genuine. It's on Liverpool-headed paper. So, you know, I got the job and a company car and a salary and semi-professional football. So to answer your question, I retired, I think, 1975 from football. I was about quite early, really. I was the early 30s, you know, because the company were great. They allowed me to train 2 nights a week and play away from home. And it was a good standard of football. It's like the non-league now in England. You know, a lot of the non-league teams are as good as the professional leagues. And so that was a really big break for me, really. And again, you only get one chance. So I had to take it. That changed my life completely because it gave me a job.
Wow, but it also tells you, I mean, even after football, Bill Shankly kept being there in your life. And I bet he's still.
He did. He did, because one of the things, I mean, it was great being in Liverpool. And I see somebody said something about the Beatles there. But it was great being in Liverpool in the early 60s because it wasn't just the football. They had the music. We were kids. We were all 17, 18. We used to watch the Beatles playing in the Cavern live. We used to go and watch them at the Odd Spot, you know, and the Searchers and Jay and Marsden. In fact, in the book, there's a story in the book, which is true, that Peter Thompson and I, we lived together for 3 years in lodgings. Peter, he was a great friend of mine. And Peter and I went to a party in Liverpool where Jerry Marsden was there and Jimmy Tarbuck, who was a well-known comedian in Liverpool. And we were sat there, and Jerry Marsden came over to Peter. We were sat, myself, Carol, my wife, Peter, and his then wife, Barbara. Jerry Marsden came over with this long playing record. It was a yellow covered record, and the last track on the record was "You'll Never Walk Alone," and we never heard of it. And he said to Peter Thompson, "I want you to listen to this, Peter. It's from Carousel." We didn't know what Carousel was, so he put it on, and of course the music started, and he played it right through. And at the end of the track, Peter said, "It's too slow, Jerry. It's not as good as your other hits." And Jerry just looked at him and laughed. He said, "Peter, it's going to be big." So we were probably two of the first people to hear the song. That was 1963. So, and Peter and I were great friends. And one of the good things about this book is that I'm in touch with a lot of the children of the players I played with. Ian Ross's family, Tommy Smith's family, Alfie Arrowsmith's family, Peter Thompson's family, and especially Tommy Lawrence's family. They're wonderful people. And they were all going to come to the Shankly Hotel for the launch, which was due to be held in October. But of course, the pandemic put paid to that, plus my illness. So we've had to postpone it. So I'm hoping we can still do something, because they all want to meet up and talk about the dads. Because I'm one of the few people left that played with them,
Wow.
So that was
and
beneficial to the group. Lovely people.
Yeah. And we're talking now about this book. I mean, you hear your story, and everyone that has ever talked to you, we can understand why you are the way you are right now. I mean, your whole story, it's obvious it had to be in a book, and I'm sure that someday Jeff and you are gonna get a phone call because somebody wants to make the movie. I mean, young boy from Scotland. Your father was a war hero. Grew up with your parents. They passed away, but you came to Liverpool, met Shankly. I mean, it's amazing, and you can understand now why you are the way you are. But lots of people might think, well, I'm on my 70s now. I already played professional football, played for Liverpool, played in South Africa, have a wonderful family, a lovely wife, who is really important in your life. We can tell by the pictures you post with her, and she's your wife, your friend. So many people might think, okay, that's it. I'm in the 70s. I'm just gonna sit down and relax. But not you. Now, another adventure, writing the book, meeting with Jeff, which I have to tell. I'm sure he's watching. And one of the most amazing things I've had from being a Liverpool fan is meeting Jeff and having Jeff as a friend. Yeah. He's a great guy, also with an amazing story. I'm really glad to have Jeff as a friend. So you meet Jeff, and now a new adventure in your 70s, being part of a book and writing this book with Jeff.
Well, the book would never have happened but for Jeff, because Jeff had the contacts in the publishing industry. He's also got the talent to make the book interesting and put it into proper context. I mean, it's been, as I said earlier on, it's been a fantastic experience working with Jeff. He's a very, very moral person. He works for the National Health Service. Everything he does is right, and he's loved Liverpool for many, many years. Cop season ticket holder. So he and I become very good friends. And yeah, you're right. It's been a great adventure, and it's given me some focus. And especially in the last few months, when I had this trauma with this operation, I mean, I was in intensive care for 9 nights, so it wasn't an easy run. But the doctors there were fantastic. The Liverpool Heart and Chest Hospital, I pay tribute to them. I mean, they were unbelievable. And in fact, I'm going tomorrow for my first checkup, which is 9 weeks after the operation. So I'm sure that from tomorrow I'll be able to be back driving again and back on the golf course after Christmas. So I'll make 100% recovery. I've got all new plumbing. So,
yeah, for sure. I mean,
it's onwards and upwards.
you
And I've
you
got a
look
wonderful
stronger
family as well.
than me, and I'm 36.
I mean, I've got 2 sons and 4 grandsons. And like a lot of families, we're split down the middle. My youngest son is an Evertonian. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's true. And he's very proud of being an Evertonian. He's a season ticket holder in the Park End. And my oldest son is a fanatical Liverpool supporter, and we've travelled everywhere, Istanbul and Athens, and we've had great fun on the following Liverpool as supporters. There he is, and that's Istanbul after the final whistle, which is an unbelievable night. And my youngest son and I play golf together, so there's never been any aggro in the family. It's always been good-natured banter, exchanging emails and good fun, So they're great brothers, they're great friends, and the grandchildren are all great as well. So it's been a wonderful life, really, and it's not over yet. Still got a bit of time left to go and watch Liverpool win the championship again. I didn't think they would win it in my lifetime, to be honest.
Well,
yes, Jeff.
That's great. What a year! What a year! And we'll go to the championship in a bit. Just about now, we're looking at The Lost Shankly Boy. This amazing book. I started reading it. I love it, and I mean, not just Liverpool fans should read this book. I mean, any football fan, but I think everyone, because it's an inspiring story, really inspiring story. It will inspire, of course, Liverpool fans, of course, football fans, but anyone would be inspired by your story, George. And right now, people watching, really go to the platforms. You can find it on Amazon. I don't know, George, if right now they are shipping outside of the UK or just in the UK.
Well, it's being launched in the United States on the 1st of December. And I think there's a company called Barnes and Noble. Barnes and Noble, I think, they distribute in the United States, and there's a few others as well. So it will be published in the United States 1st of December. Be available there, widely available there.
Okay. Well, anyone watching, you should get The Lost Shankly Boy by Jeff Goulding, and I mean, it's really, 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 really a good story, inspiring. And if you are a Liverpool Football Club fan, it's a must. I mean, it's George's story, but you will also read about how it all began back in the Shankly era. Lots of things that you wouldn't find just anywhere about your reading about your story, George. Some of the details, the pictures, the stories there are unbelievable for a Liverpool fan.
Well, I'm quite lucky. I've got a reasonably good memory still. Sadly, a lot of my contemporaries that I played with are either ill or they're not too well. And there's only about 3 left from that great team, really, that are able to talk about those days, really. So I wanted to get it all down on paper while I could still remember, so that people will understand how it all started. And I was fortunate to be there. I'm very, very lucky to be there at the time, And I do appreciate that fact, because it's been a big part of my life, Liverpool Football Club. And Liverpool as a city is a fantastic city. They've got fantastic people. I mean, the humour, everything about it is just a wonderful place, and the passion in Anfield in a European night. I mean, you just have to be there to understand it, really. Absolutely fantastic. Some of the games we've seen recently, Barcelona, Dortmund, years ago, St Etienne and Inter Milan. It's endless.
And what do you think about the club era? I mean, you're part of Liverpool. You lived there, the Shankly era, and then you've been a fan for a long time. You've lived through anything. You were in Istanbul, but these past years have been amazing for Liverpool fans. What do you think of the club era?
Well, I mean, as soon as Jurgen Klopp took over, when he said, "I am the normal one," and then he actually said, "Give me 4 years. Give me 4 years and I'll have the Premier League title for you. But be patient, give me the chance." I mean, he's full of charisma. He's always smiling. He's obviously got a great relationship with the players. They all respect him, just like we used to respect Shankly. He's like a modern Shankly, really. I mean, he gets it. He understands Liverpool. He understands the people. He knows what they're all about. He knows how to push the hot button. When he goes up to the cop and punches the air 3 times, and the passion on the line, and he never ever gets nervous. No matter how big the game, he's confident, and that must transpire itself through to the fans and to the team. I think he's amazing. I think he really is. I mean, he's the best manager I think in the world at the moment, and he's managing the best team as well.
To me, he is. I mean, right now, the start of this season has been, I mean, lots of injuries, but I mean, we trust the club and we trust the lads. We have an amazing team. It's going to be a tough season, but it's going to be an amazing season too. And now the championship, I mean, it was the holy grail for Liverpool fans, the Premier League. And when it happened, we were living this thing that personally, I never thought I would leave, the pandemic. How did you live the championship, George? How did you celebrate? How was it for you and your family?
Well, as you know, Jeff's written a wonderful book about it, Jurgen Klopp and the Holy Grail, Champions Under Lockdown. And in that book, he describes perfectly hang on 1 second.
Okay, I think he's gone for a while, but he'll be back, I'm sure. Well, while George is back, just remind people, I mean, to just go right now and Google The Lost Shankly Boy by Jeff Goulding, the amazing story of George Scott. And you can find also all of Jeff Goulding's books here. Here I have the first one, Red Odyssey. This Red Odyssey tells the story of Liverpool Football Club. It was released in 2017 for the 125th anniversary of the club. It's amazing. I mean, the writing of Jeff, really, I've never been to Anfield. I've never been even to Liverpool. I was supposed to go this year to celebrate the Premier League, but the pandemic happened. But reading this book, I mean, the way he describes moments, things, really, I was going through it, and I could smell the local pubs. I could hear the You'll Never Walk Alone. I could see the green grass in Anfield. The way Jeff writes, it's unbelievable. And well, he has a trilogy of Red Odyssey. Oh, we're back. Yes,
Hello?
George?
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
The connection went down. I don't know what happened, but it's come back up.
Okay, well,
can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you perfectly. So
okay, right.
You were telling us about the championship during the pandemic, George.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, Jeff written this wonderful book, and he's had views from fans all over the world who've written to him and give their impressions on their feelings about winning the league, and it's some amazing stories in there. For myself, I mean, I felt disappointed at the end that we couldn't celebrate, that we couldn't go through the streets and support the lads and give them the big send-off and the big welcome they deserved. But can you imagine, to win the league by, is it 20 points or 18 points? At one stage, they were 25 points ahead. It's unbelievable. In our wildest dreams, no supporter would ever think a team could win the Premier League by that margin, especially when you're against teams like Manchester City. Great teams, wonderful team. So Liverpool, I mean, last year were just unbelievable. I don't know how they could beat it. I mean, I have no reason to suppose they wouldn't win it again this year. They're at the top of the league in these early days, and they just got to keep doing what they've been doing. And I'm sure they could win it.
Yes, it was a great season, and well, obviously we're gonna always be supporting the team and still enjoying being Liverpool fans. But George, now with The Lost Shankly Boy, I mean, what's coming? What's next? The book is out. So what's happening now?
Well, it's difficult with the pandemic over here, at the moment. I mean, I'm doing an interview on LFC TV next week with Jason McAteer and Peter McDowell. It's a program called Extra Time, and it's a Shankly themed program. And on the program is the producer of the new film, Shankly, Busby and Steen. It's being recorded next week, I'm not sure when it's going out. It'll probably going out in November. So we've got that. There's a big article on the book in the Aberdeen Ex-Players magazine, which goes out to all the ex-players that ever played for Aberdeen, including Alex Ferguson, all the managers as well. It's been in a lot of the newspapers over here, the Liverpool Echo, the Aberdeen Press and Journal, in South Africa as well. And I think the power of the internet, Raoul, is amazing. Because, I mean, I started really on Facebook a number of years ago, just writing about Liverpool. And one of the articles I wrote was on a website called Red and White Cop. And it was 19,000 people read it. And I thought, well, it's a powerful medium. I mean, you're lucky if you ever sell 19,000 books. You can get 19,000 people to read an article. It's a great reach. And I think that came through to me when I was in hospital, because a number of people from the different fan sites that wrote me good wishes. It's very humbling. I mean, you know, it almost brought me to tears in the intensive care unit. My phone kept pinging all the time. And the nurses were saying, what's another message, you know? And that's the power of the Liverpool family. You know, they're really, really wonderful, the supporters. Singapore, Italy, you know, America, Texas, you know well, is Stephen in
Yes.
Texas, Stephen Wilson, and the
Yes.
boys in Italy as well, you know. So, yeah, it's been good fun, and I've enjoyed talking about Liverpool because it really, I could talk about Liverpool all night. I mean, they're such a wonderful club, you know.
Yes, and I mean, yeah, and what you're saying about the internet, I mean, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's through the internet how I met you and Jeff and all the guys from Cop Connect, Stephen and Texas, and all the Liverpool fans, and internet with the craziness of Liverpool fans. It's been amazing, this journey, and it's great that we're able to chat like this, even though you're in Liverpool, I'm in Mexico, and being able to talk about what we're passionate about and about this book, The Lost Shankly Boy, that I'm sure it's going to be a success. And I was telling you, I'm sure in a few years you're going to get that call, Jeff and you, because someone will want to make the movie. So be prepared. Good thing you have that amazing memory, because you're going to be having to help write the script.
I'm just happy to have got the book published because I never thought in my wildest dreams. In fact, it's a wonderful experience. And Jeff told me this, he said, because he's written 5 books now, including this one. And he said, when you see your first book in Waterstones in Liverpool on the shelf next to Jeffrey Archer and other people, he said, it's a great feeling to see that book just from a meeting in the Shankly Hotel with nothing on the page. 9 months later, to have that book produced with the photographs and the various chapters and everything, it's something I'm very proud of. And I know Jeff is as well, the books he's written as well.
Yeah, that's great. Congratulations to you, George and Jeff, for this book. And well, thanks a lot for being here. It has been a pleasure. Thank you, George.
Yeah, I'm sorry the actual line went down before. I don't know quite what happened there, but anyway, we got back in the end, didn't we?
Yes. Thank you, and we'll still in touch. And thanks a lot for being here.
Okay, Raoul. Thanks. You look after yourself. Lovely to talk to you. Good night.
Lovely to talk to you. Good night. And well, everybody watching, really go right now to get The Lost Shankly Boy on Amazon, or Google it, or also in Pitch Publishing. Look for them on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can get The Lost Shankly Boy and all of Jeff Goulding books. Really great books, especially for Liverpool fans. Thanks a lot for being here, watching. We are really happy to be back on the show. Thanks, George. And well, remember that when you support Liverpool, you will never walk alone. See you next time.